There we go. Hi, so I'm Corey. I'm the head of UX at Motorsport Games, specifically working on building the next sim racing experience. I just want to say thank you, the city, for hosting this event, but we'll jump straight in, I suppose. I'd like you to imagine the first time you started a new game and you're enveloped with the sprawling landscape that you just can't wait to jump into, or the enticing proposal of building worlds and making friends and competing with others. But right before it being ripped away from that feeling by multiple pop-ups, models with no visual way of closing them, already being presented with a grocery list of objectives that the game wants you to do, and don't forget that the battle pass is already on sale. Would you be excited to continue playing? I know I wouldn't. Now, think back to a game that grabbed your attention right from the start. Maybe it's Elden Ring and the feeling when you first left the crypt, or God of War, where from the beginning you feel the power of swinging Kratos' axe. The difference between these experiences is the onboarding. Elden Ring managed to get even the strongest haters of the Souls genre to sink hundreds of hours into its campaign. And in the first 15 minutes of God of War, it manages to give you a whole new appreciation for its protagonists and takes the series in an entirely different direction. None of that could have happened without effective onboarding. And effective onboarding is a combination of, what I think anyway, is simplicity and engagement. The game needs to be simple enough that a player can understand the steps they need to take, while being engaging enough to make them want to take those steps. Every game faces different challenges when creating that onboarding, and every game's users are different. And so there's no one solution for any combination of game or player, though through understanding your user and making intuitive design decisions, you can create an onboarding experience like God of War or Elden Ring. I have a couple examples we can run through. The Last of Us faces the challenge of guiding players through a vast apocalyptic world while maintaining immersion in the game. While immersion in the game's world. They solve this issue in the form of using visual and auditory cues. There's no Google Maps in the apocalyptic future, and so the game uses natural lighting to help guide the player to the next story beat. If you have a keen eye, you might have even noticed an old road sign conveniently pointing down alleyways, another method to guide the player. It's also a game that can put you on edge, but through the use of the companions commenting on their surroundings, they let you know when you can relax, explore, and let your heartbeat settle a little bit. Along with that, consistency is key. Even though the Assassin's Creed game series is now spanning 12 games, you can jump into any of them and find the familiar controls that let you quickly get back into enjoying the parkour the franchise is best known for. And on top of that, even when jumping into the present day, they still manage to maintain the familiar controls, even though you maybe aren't able to parkour anymore. Learning the controls and mechanics of a game is one of the first things we want our players to do. And we all know the days of getting an instruction manual inside your game box are now a thing of the past. We now look to integrating tutorials within the game's progression, story, or environment, ensuring the players are engaged and learning by doing. We can look at games like Total Warhammer. They face the issue of having a diverse player base. They would be bringing in veterans of the Total War series and fans of Warhammer franchise who may have never had an experience with the series at all. Catered to the diverse players groups and their different levels of experience, they designed opt-in tutorials. The player can select the level of tutorial that best matches their experience. They also didn't stop there. These tutorials are woven into the narrative of the game, being presented to you by your own personal advisor. Another thing you need is for players to feel safe to explore, and thus safe to fail. Fortnite's creative mode is another testament to intuitive onboarding design. In this mode, players can build, experiment, and play without the pressure of battle royale matches, giving the older gamers like myself a safe place to learn the game mechanics away from a 12-year-old esports level streamer. While we want our players to learn our game's controls, gaming isn't merely about mastering controls or defeating adversaries. It's a journey of exploration, growth, and achievements. By marrying learning with rewards, we can turn potential tedious tutorials into captivating gameplay experiences. Stardew Valley, for example, starts you on your humble journey as a farmer with simple tools. As you learn more about the game's materials and crafting mechanics, you unlock new tools, animals to keep, and recipes to craft. Each reward and new material complement and build off each other, encouraging the player to spend more time learning the game's mechanics, and therefore more time playing. And who said rewards always needed to be item-based? Weaving into the game's narrative can be a rewarding experience. The Witcher 3, for example, if you spend the time to complete companion quests, you're rewarded with some of the best storytelling the game has to offer. And in so, this encourages the player to also complete other side quests, keeping you engaged and completing more hours in the game. Now that the player has learned the controls, mechanics, got a hand of everything the game has to offer, we can start looking at things like the feedback loops. An effective feedback loop ensures that games evolve based on players' insights, making them more immersive, user-friendly, and engaging. It's one thing to release a game and another to nurture it post-launch. Overwatch continuously engages with its community, be it via forums, public betas, and developer updates, all with the goal of understanding their player, their needs, and their grievances. The onboarding's job here is to make sure the player is aware of these items and is presented with the one that best fits them. Games like Beat Saber reward and encourage the player with real-time feedback. Mastering the mechanics of the game gives the player an enriching experience of sound and visual effects, encouraging you to master the songs that you like best and to aim for those new high scores. What's important is that effective onboarding is not just about providing information, but about creating an environment where the player feels empowered to explore, understand, and master the game. It is the responsibility of the UX designer to understand their players and what drives them, to work out what motivates them, and ultimately what keeps them engaged. That's it. That's the end of my short presentation. Thank you for listening. And a bit of time for obviously Q&A now.
Thank you so much, Gary. Keeping up on time. That's awesome. We do have some questions in the Q&A, so feel free to add some questions in the Q&A. There's a question that is broad as well, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. See how you can handle this one. Do you have any tips for improving onboarding for a children's game? Any material is welcome. Yeah, right.
Specifically children games. Yeah, that's really
yeah, it's okay if you don't.
Specifically, that's a tough one. I don't actually have.
It is a tough one.
That specific degree.
I worked with a children's game. It's so quick tips. You need to understand child development to understand what to expect, because children are not small adults. But it's complicated. You need to have people who know a little bit about that, and it's not something easy to answer just right now. It depends on the age of the children as well. Like a 8-year-old is really not at all similar to a 13-year-old. So sorry, anonymous attendee. We have another question.
Yeah. All right, I saw one from earlier from before that was asking, do game designers make the calls of the content features that will motivate them? For example, who should be in charge of the game's first-time user experience? Oh, it's interesting. And I think it touches on what you said earlier about how how really UX still doesn't have a defined role in the games industry, a clearly defined role anyway, and where it lives. And I think to do with that question with Sebastian anyway, it depends on the studio specifically and its structure and where it is, but also that that really the UX designer, I see them anyway, is as an advisor. So being able to interpret player feedback, player behavior, and to use that to then, for example, influence level design or game design or other feedback loops.
I have questions on onboarding for either mobile games or VR. Which one do you would like to tackle?
VR sounds like fun.
Okay, so what examples have you seen in VR that encapsulate an effective onboarding experience, given VR is widely different from traditional console games?
I think so I can't say specifically what, every game is different, we said, and every user is different. What helps with VR specifically is more about emergent game design anyway, or emergent UX. So because it is often grounded in some reality of what you're also capable of doing, you can connect it to more real world experiences, in the fact of, for example, Alex, the game Alex, being able to pick up a pen and draw on the whiteboard or draw on the glass. You're instantly told and shown that this game follows the rule of the real world. And so in that sense, it already starts to get you past the limits of what you might consider as, oh, this is a VR game, I can't go this far anymore, for example, or there are limits in this game. So look at real world experiences or real world impacts and design, and see if you can also sort of mix those in with simple tricks.
All right, so we have a bunch of questions. Do you have tips for onboarding co-op experiences?
Depending on the experience, so there's loads of challenges obviously with co-op. Some of them is that depending on the type of game you have, it could be that one of your players is high experience, one of your players is low experience, and that's in games in general. So It Takes Two does quite a good job of allowing both players to have to, in the beginning, they often have to cooperate on singular tasks. And so, for example, when a player with more experience understands they need to jump and hang onto a lever, the button they need to press for that, the camera changes and the game gives cues to direct them at that player. It allows the players to actually explain to each other. So it helps them learn and progress through the game or build on top of each other in that sense of each other's experience. I'm not sure if my audio has died. Or Celia's.
Yeah, no, it's me. I have two ways of muting, and I unmuted just one of these two. So I was just talking to the void. Yeah, maybe this question from Francois. Francois is saying, I see that you're working on simulation games. I was interested in how do you apply that to your game concretely?
It's actually one of the biggest ones that one of the biggest challenges, which is both balancing the level of simulation with real world. So in the case of, say, myself or the games I work on to do with sim racing, they go into such complexity with car setups that you couldn't imagine. You almost need the manual for the actual car to understand what you're doing and what the impact is that you have. And really, it's the best method that I try and use for that is scaffolding. And so scaffolding is about taking what the user knows. So, for example, if you own a car, you drive a car, you know what an engine light means, or you know what the headlight LED means, things like that. And then you can slowly build on those ideas. So we hope that you would know what suspension is. And from there, we can do a generalization of what it means to increase something on the suspension. Maybe we say stiffer equals harder cornering, or we say softer equals softer cornering, meaning better straight speed. And so we generalize it for that, and we slowly introduce them further and further down the rabbit hole of what is a really deep rabbit hole at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Corey, for your talk and insights.